So, Katie, while I was poking around on your website, you refer to yourself as a cause-based conservation filmmaker in your bio, and I love that. I had never really encountered all of that strung together so perfectly. So, can you elaborate on that title for folks who might not immediately understand it, and talk a bit about your path to becoming a cause-based conservation filmmaker?
Yeah, so my mission has always been to use storytelling to amplify cause-based conservation. And I define that as conservation that creates an equitable and prosperous future in harmony with nature for everyone. And that's because not all conservation activities are good. So that's why I use the term cause-based conservation. And it really focuses in on my commitment to tell stories that respect Indigenous and local communities' rights and human rights more broadly, while maintaining healthy, sustainable ecosystems. And as far as my path in getting to this spot, I went to school at American University and I studied in the Center for Environmental Filmmaking. So with all the internships that the school had to offer, I was really able to, graduate with intentionality for what I wanted to do, but also with a broad skill set in knowing how to get there.
Your professional day job title at Conservation International is senior video producer. What does being a senior video producer at Conservation International look like? I know a lot of folks dream of a full-time filmmaking job, but what's it really like to be creating content for a well-established nonprofit 9 to 5?
Yeah, it encompasses a lot of roles. So I will, develop and pitch a story from start to finish. So I'll be the director, producer, shooter, writer, editor, graphics designer, sometimes the host or the voiceover artist. But besides that role, I also will work, with internal clients to produce videos for their needs, whether it's a government meeting or a grant request. And then I'll work with our field offices and make sure the international video branding and messaging is on par with the rest of the organization. And then there's working with external partners and leading creative strategy discussions for the branding communications team. So it's a lot of things.
Yeah, that is a lot, but it sounds like it's incredibly fun and rewarding.
Yes, completely.
That's awesome. So I know that a lot of your work focuses on the intersection of women and conservation. Can you talk a bit about Conservation International's Women on a Mission initiative and what role you see women playing in conservation efforts?
Yeah, so Women on a Mission's goal is to uplift the voices of local and Indigenous women conservation leaders. Unfortunately, it's an all too common reality that women's voices are not heard, especially at the community level. So these films champion women and their voices and leadership and provide them with a powerful voice at a global scale. And then as far as women's role in conservation efforts, women are the stewards of our natural resources. They produce more than half of the world's food, yet they own less than 20% of the world's land, and they lack equal land rights in over 90 countries, and remain unrepresented in decision-making at all levels. And of course, women face barriers to capital and markets and training and technologies. So with all of this inequity, women are more vulnerable to climate change and they're more likely to experience poverty. So I tend to ask myself the question, how do we create a better world and adapt and invent when half of our population is marginalized? And that goes for other communities as well. I really think we need diversity, inclusion, equality, and equity in order to save the planet.
So when you were creating the Women on a Mission series, what were some of the challenges that you encountered throughout that process?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think time is a big one. With my last production in Kenya, I was shooting 4 different films in just 2 weeks. And then I had to come back to the office and edit 2 of those films, which were the Women on a Mission films. in less than 25 days. So it's always just a challenge in getting things done on time.
I know you've been a ton of places. So you're talking about working in Kenya. I know you've also worked in Tanzania, Fiji, Peru, Indonesia, and I'm leaving a whole bunch of places off of that list. So, you're crunched for time, but what's it like to work in an environment that's so foreign to you? And then sort of a second part of that question is, I wonder what hurdles you might face as a female filmmaker in the field, whether it's abroad or at home.
Yeah, I really love it. I mean, there are challenges with communication and language, but it's always really refreshing to see new perspectives of the world and create lasting relationships. Of course, as a filmmaker, you plan everything out ahead of time, but when you get on the ground, things change. And so working in these places is always a lesson in, letting go a bit and learning how to adapt and coming up with solutions on the spot. And then as a female filmmaker, I found that you really need to prove your chops very quick. I'm usually traveling by myself and telling these stories just as a solo female filmmaker. So I'm not coming in with this large crew, and it can be easy to be overlooked a lot of times. But there's a lot of benefits too. Sometimes I think it could be easier for people to open up to me and invite me into their homes, and maybe my small size can help me, get into certain situations and blend in, and I can be nimble and quick.
Yeah, no, I love to hear about the challenges and the benefits to being a female filmmaker. We don't need to talk about it like it's always a bad thing.
Right.
So that's just incredible to hear. And, how has producing the Women on a Mission series impacted you? Has it inspired your commitment to conservation even more, or has it made you see things differently than you had previously?
Yeah, Women on a Mission is a total dream project for me, and I feel so fortunate to get to meet and learn from women all around the world. And every time I get to travel and share these stories, I feel so reinvigorated to do more, because there's so many stories to be recognized and voices of empowerment and leadership. So my only hope is that by sharing these stories, they create a positive impact and move the needle a little closer in creating an inclusive and sustainable planet.
Well, I know that all of us at the festival have been loving the series, so we're very much hoping that you keep it up. Thank you so much for taking the time and energy, which I know is kind of scarce for you these days, but it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm looking forward to a time where we can hang out in person.
Yes, thank you so much, Sam.